because I want to kind of get started on some of the things that we have to do. I know time is precious because there are church things, neighborhood things, Christmas things, school things. There's lots of things going on in these few weeks before Christmas, and you're trying to wrap everything up. So again, I want to thank you for all of the hard work that you put in of getting that SIOP done on time. That was really good. I mean, I know you were under a lot of pressure to get that done, but the work was really good. You know, everything I read was good, and I've seen your scores, and you know, from most of you, and that they all look good. So congratulations on that. And I'm just assuming that all of you were up to date when you started the 605, because I didn't, you know, haven't been with you the whole time that you've been in the program. So I'm assuming that everybody was up to date with all of those artifacts, because you know that in order to get this license, you have to have all 6 of those artifacts finished and submitted and graded in TaskStream. So you all did the CAP at the beginning of this semester, and you have finished the SIOP. So if you were up to date when you started this semester, then we're all good to go on that part. So I'm wanting to start out tonight with just a little checklist to make sure that that you were up to par with all of these things. And here are the things that you have to be sure that you have finished, okay, in order to finish up with your program. And so, you know, just write down the ones that you haven't done. But the first thing, of course, is you have to pass 605. And Kimry was just asking me how many points do we have to have for that. And I taught 603 and it was 3,000. I think I've heard something like 2,700, but somewhere between that and 3,000. But, you know, you're getting those points, 100 points for everything that you do, all of those tasks, the discussion boards. So all of those things. So just, I think I think everybody's in pretty good shape. Sometimes I'll go back and look at those total points, but I've been trying to check off, you know, each of those individual things. And if I see anybody in any kind of danger of not having the A, I'll let you know. But I believe that it's just an A. So, you know, there's a wide range of points, and some people usually have way over the minimum number to get an A. And that's something that's set up by the universities. It's not something that I set up. So I think there's a good margin there. I think you're probably all okay with that. But if I'll go in and look at it a little bit later, and if I see any warning signs, I'll send you a note individually. So, but you want to complete all of the assignments in 605. So I think you're coming up on your last discussion boards, and then that very last assignment in the last week is based off of that book and your final reflection that you need to write. So just kind of keep up with your syllabus and finish up those last few things in the course. So then, as far as your portfolio for your license, in addition to those 6 artifacts, you had the School of Ed dispositions, and that was just the little, you know, buttons that you had to check. And we've talked about those several times in this course, that's a really quick thing to just go through and check it off, and, you know, turn it into TaskStream to be evaluated. And probably all of you have finished that. But if you haven't, that is one of the things that has to be done. But you might want to make a copy of those dispositions, because what you believe in and so forth is important, and it's some talking points for you in some interviews. And we're going to talk about those interviews and stuff a little bit tonight. So I think that the School of Ed dispositions would be a good thing for you to have a copy of what they are, even though you might not have had to spend much time in completing this task. And then the competency analysis is in your DRF portfolio, and that's where you have the 21 competencies, and you have to have a little paragraph about each one of those competencies that will tell how you are competent in that competency. So in SIOP 6, the task 6, you wrote a little paragraph for each one of those, and that can be cut and pasted. However, a lot of you have been in there and there is no text box for you to cut and paste that. So I think the only thing that most of you have had to do is either just check met or unmet, but make sure you check met. You're at the end of the program, okay? So make sure that you check met for each one of those 21 competencies. If you get a text box, cut and paste. If you don't worry about it. And then your internship log, each semester you had to do 80 hours and you uploaded those in the competency folio. It was down at the very bottom on that left-hand menu. You had all the 21 competencies, and then it said digital competencies, and then down at the bottom it said internship hours, and that's where you were uploading your logs. Oh, I'm sorry. And so so now what you want to do is you have to take all 3 of those from the first semester, the second, and this third semester, and you put those in the DRF portfolio. Does anybody need to see that? Okay, let's look at it real quick. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to have to log back in because I haven't been in since this morning. Too many things in the way. Okay. I'm just going to go into the SMELS 2017 because I don't have access to your stuff, only in the reviewer. But when you log in, this is what your page looks like. And so under 605, you've done the CAP and the SIAP, and this isn't quite right because the skip was moved to 603. School of Ed dispositions, this is where you go in and do those, check those boxes. And the competency analysis, that's where you're going to go in and check met or not met. And like I said, if it gives you a text box, cut and paste from what you put in SIOP 6. But I think a lot of people have reported to me that it didn't give you the text box. And I don't actually have access to what you're seeing with that, so I'm not sure how that looks. Okay, so you have this final competency folio. We'll talk about that in a minute, but right here is where you go in and put those 3 internship logs. Upload all 3, the one from each semester, because when you upload it right here, now it is going to be evaluated by a separate evaluator in TaskStream. When each of those first 2 semesters, when you were putting it in the log, your coach was able to see it and just give you some feedback. It's just kind of like a review. But now it needs to be evaluated. So right here is where you're going to put those logs. So if you already put it in your competency folio for this semester, that's fine. But now you just want to take all 3 of those and upload them right here for evaluation. Any question about that? Okay, so the last thing is this competency folio, the final competency folio. Let me tell you, do not upload anything right here until you get the go-ahead from me. Because if you upload it there and you forgot something, or, you know, if I haven't reviewed it, and you maybe have messed something up or forgot something, you can't go back and change it. Once it goes in right here, it's done, no matter what it looks like. So do not put anything here until you hear from me. You're going to go up here and go into your folio and web pages, and you're going to pull up your competency folio. I'm just going to pull up one that I had made up. And you're going in here, and you need to make sure that you have finished all of these, okay? It tells you here see if I can move y'all. It tells you here that you have to have an evidence from the APSL, the PSYOP, and an open-ended. Open-ended means something from your clinical experience, okay? And it tells you that you need to have a digital example, okay? Because down at the bottom here on this menu, it says digital learning competencies. You do not have to put anything there, because what we have done is we have gone back and embedded those in each of these, well, it's really in 18 of these 21, okay? So if it says that you need a digital example, okay, then you need to make sure that one of those things that you've uploaded, that you've used some technology. That could be a presentation, it could be, you know, a Google Doc, it could be a video, pictures, you know, whatever that shows your, you know, that you have used some digital technology in presenting whatever it is, that evidence that you're sharing, okay? So you go in and you put whatever it is that you're uploading. It could just be an attachment, minutes, agendas, you know, anything like that. So you put your attachments, or you know, if it's a PowerPoint or you know, any kind of media, you can just put it in here. And then you go up here and click this request comments, and you should have Dr. Pickard's name. And those that are in Dr. Robertson's class would have my name. And you, because whoever your CC2 coach is, that's who you should request comments from. Well, then we can go in, and I'm going to show you what that screen looks like for me. But now you see here where it says APSL, PSYOP, and open-ended. That's not a suggestion. That means that you have to have an example from APSL. You have to have one from PSYOP, and you have to have one open-ended. All right. So make sure that you follow that for each one of these. Whatever it tells you that you need to have, make sure that you have shared an evidence from those artifacts and something from your clinical experience. So if I go back and let's just say that I am reviewing some of the students that I'm coaching. You all started in spring of 2018. And so I have some comments. So Tamara is in our class tonight. Her competencies have all been checked, okay? It's not notifying me, but as I get notifications, it shows up here, and then I go in and review that portfolio to make sure that you have all three of those evidences for each one of those. When I'm sure that you have completed this portfolio, then I will give you the instructions to go back and upload it into your DRF. Okay, which means that you would go, there's a little 2-minute video that Dr. Lamb has put together for you to upload your final competency folio. It goes right here when you get ready to upload it for evaluation. So that's it. That's it on your checklist. So you should know kind of where you are. I think all of you may still have, you know, 1 or 2 assignments that you have to finish up here for the class, and you should probably be finished with your log and that School of Ed dispositions and the competency analysis. So really you're just looking at maybe finishing up that competency folio. The deadline is December 3rd. So that is going to be Monday, December 3rd at 9 a.m. So you need to have that competency folio finished, and I will check it and get right back to you, because then once I check it and get back to you, all you have to do is do that upload into TaskStream for evaluation. So it's not very difficult to do that. So it'll be a quick turnaround thing. If you send me your, if you finish that competency folio and you don't hear from me, like within 24 hours, you send me a note, send me a text, okay? Send me a text so that I will be alerted that I need to check that stuff real quick for you. I will be checking them every day from here, to Monday, to make sure that I can get them all checked quickly. But my notification thing doesn't work. It might be me, I'm not sure. But anyway, a couple of those that you saw on my list, I have checked them, but there's something still that the student has to do, and that's why it's not really cleared off. But I don't really always get those notifications, so if I miss seeing yours, in a timely fashion, please just reach out to me. And my number is 910-977-3342. So send me a text, and I'll stop what I'm doing and make sure that I get it checked so that you can go ahead and finish up. But those will be the last things. At that point, next Monday, everybody's name is going to go to the printer for those certificates and for graduation and for all of that stuff, and everything's going to be cleaned up. The only thing that you will have left next week, we will have class again next week, and you're just going to kind of be finishing up your assignments for the class. But everything for this portfolio to get your license from the state is going to be finished by next Monday. All right, so if anybody runs into any problems with any of that, just reach out to me and let me know. I'll try to help you with that. I will hold the office hour on Thursday evening, so if you have any questions about anything as you're trying to finish that up, just let me know, and we'll check that out and make sure that we get it done. Okay. So now I want to share something else with you. Let me see if I can move y'all out of the way again, so I can read my. Let's see, where is it? Last night, Dr. Lamb held the MELS 605 town hall meeting. And in that town hall meeting, he was talking about interviewing. So I would like for you to, where's the instructions? Hold on just a minute. Let me see. Okay, here's the instructions. I'd like for you to respond to the poll everywhere. And so you can do it two ways. You can text Sarah Whitaker 152 to 22333. And then you're going to just put A for yes and B for no. So could you do that real quick? I want to know if you attended or you watched the video from Dr. Lamb's interviewing session last night.
Dr. Whitaker.
Yes.
This is Cynthia Mosley. I'm still on the highway driving. I got stuck in traffic because it was a wreck. And
okay.
So I can't text and drive.
Okay.
But I did attend the town hall meeting last night.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Cynthia.
With Calandra Brisbane, I attended, but I'm currently unable to.
Who just said that?
Do that, right? Calandra Brisbane.
Calandra. Okay.
But I attended last night, the town hall meeting.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so it looks like we're all there. Everybody has seen it. So I want you to
getting there. I did a 10, but I'm typing it in.
You're typing it in?
Yeah, I'm trying to get there on my internet, but I did a 10. I'll get there.
Okay.
What can I do need your thing. It's not my thing is not popping up.
All right. Well, let's look here. In one or two words, I wanted you to tell me what your takeaway from those interviewing tips were. What was the main thing that stuck out to you? And again, if you're driving, don't worry about doing that. We'll just catch you up. You can just talk to us if there's something you want to share.
I was thinking that this is Tamara speaking. I was thinking that I am not prepared for this interview. And that I need to do some things to, feel more confident about the interview process as I embark upon it. So I felt a little unprepared.
Yep. I think that perhaps Dr. Lamb talks so fast that it's like a whirlwind, all that stuff that he's telling you. And perhaps you feel like maybe you don't have all of that. You don't feel confident to just walk into the interview right this minute, but you do have the background. The work that you have done through those artifacts and the work that you have been doing through the clinical experience in your schools, you do really have the knowledge and the background for all of those things that he was talking about. But you do need to spend a little bit of time thinking about this and some preparation. And so maybe over the holidays, that would be something that you could, spend a little bit of just some quiet time, just sort of framing it, okay? It's just like those dispositions that I keep talking to you about. The only thing you've had to do with that during this program that you've been working on is just read it and say, oh yes, I do believe that. I've had some experience with that, or I haven't. And you just kind of move on. But really sitting down and looking at those dispositions and framing in your head what your beliefs are, so that if you have that opportunity, you can share that with someone else. That will make a difference. So prepare, professional, yourself. I thought it was really great that he shared with you that there are some different types of interviews. First of all, being like just a pool of applicants, and depending on what kind of job it is and how many, dress, I love that. Yes. How many applicants there are for a certain position. If there's 100 applicants, there's no way that they can or will interview 100 people. So there has to be something in your written resume, cover letter, those things that are sent in ahead of your application, for a position. There has to be something in that is going to sort of stand out. So think about that a little bit, okay? You want to make sure that there's some little something that might stand out that they're going to pull, that will make them pull your application in order for you, to be called in for an interview. So that's the first thing. He talked about the Strength Finder, and some of that, and then he talked about a group interview. And if you go in and there's a panel that's going to interview you, or a group of people around the table, you may not know all of those people, and they may not be like all superintendents and people like that. There could be some people on that, and they will introduce themselves. So before you start answering questions for that group, you will know who the audience is. But they could just be some stakeholders. So they might be some parents or some people from the community. And he talked about how to address those different groups last night. So yes, honesty was a part of that. You can't be something that you're not, and so you want to be sure. But one of the things that he really talked about was about strengths and weaknesses, and about trick questions, or what did he call them? He said the questions that would that might trip you up. Let me see, like landmine questions. Okay, he talked about sometimes there's some landmine questions in there, and they're just in there to sort of see kind of what your reaction is going to be. And one of those could be when they ask you about your strengths and your weaknesses, and you know, how should you answer that. But I thought that the guidelines that he gave you were really very wise. Okay, he said that a strength is something like within you. Okay, it is, you know, your only weakness to that is your lack of experience. Okay, and your strength is, you know, you could just say that, you know, your strengths are things about your personality, your work ethic, and things like that, things that are just innate to you. And they're your morals, your dispositions. And so that might be a place where you could talk about some of those dispositions. That would be a place that you could get that in. And whenever you can talk about something very concrete, that's very impressive. If you're just trying to talk about things off the top of your head and you don't have the specifics, you know, that probably, you know, that doesn't go quite as well. So as prepared as you can be for an interview is what you want to do. Make sure that if you get an interview, that you do take some time to, you know, you don't know exactly what they're going to ask. You might not know exactly who's going to be in there interviewing you, but just try to prepare yourself and feel confident when you go into that interview. So if you have something like those dispositions that you're going to talk about wherever you can squeeze them in, because they're not going to say, what is your dispositions? But they're going, you know, but there might be a place like when they ask you about your strengths or something that you could get that in. And that is some very concrete knowledge and information. And I think that would speak well for you. But your weaknesses are just things that you can fix by being on the job. And you could just share that, you know, that you know, the only thing that's kind of a weakness is just because you haven't had the opportunity to do it yet. You know how to do those things. To lead groups of people and to, you know, analyze data. You've done all of that in these artifacts and things that you've worked on, but you haven't had a lot of experience in, you know, in actually, you know, doing some of that. So, and then he talked about, you know, how to have a little humor and turn a negative into a positive, and about being honest, because you won't have to go back and remember, you know, something you said that might not have been true. You want to just be honest and true in everything that you are, that you're sharing in your interview. So, and I thought what he told you about, he talked to you about dress, and you should dress the part, because you want to, you'll never be, I don't think you'll ever be chastised for being like overdressed, because you're going to be professional. And I think that really goes a long way. It makes impressions on people that you may not even ever have a conversation with. And it's important, because even if it's somebody you know, you have a friend that's a principal and now they're going to interview you for an AP thing, don't take anything lightly, because you just, you know, he used an example last night of somebody that came over for an interview, and it was a teacher work day, and that person was just not put together very well. And so take the time to be sure that you are really put together. That helps your confidence a lot. If you are, you know, dressed well, you know, for the interview and for the position and so forth, that will give you a little bit of confidence. So think about that as being a part of your preparation for that. I remember my very first teaching interview. I was, you know, so worried, but I went and bought me a new skirt and blouse to wear to that interview because I just want, and it made me feel confident to know that I was putting my best foot forward in every way that I could. So I think that that's a good thing to remember. I also thought it was good when he talked about those 5 questions about things, not to talk about. And a couple of those were, don't, if they say, do you have any questions, you could just say no. And because you can just say you've been very clear about everything. Because if there's something else about the position that you just are curious about, you just want to find out about it, there will be some time later for you to find out about that. The interview is not the time. You stay confident in the interview, and if they ask you if you have any questions, just say no and tell them that they've been very clear and that you appreciate their time in the interview and the opportunity to be there to be interviewed. And but things like asking about money, he talked about that, or promotions, or flex time, or he talked about not wasting somebody's time if a position comes open. And sometimes people will say, well, it'll be good interviewing experience. Well, yeah, it is. Every time that you get to go do an interview, it is some good interviewing experience. But I had an assistant principal who interviewed at a high school, and he was kind of like that. He was sort of on the fence. Well, maybe I should go interview because it probably would be good experience and everything. And I said, well, if they offer you the job, you're going to have to take it. And sure enough, they did. And it wasn't really the job that he wanted, but he took it, and he's still there. So, I mean, you have to think about that. You can't go to, that closes a lot of doors in your district, and it could go beyond your district if you go to an interview and you're offered a position and then you don't take it, unless it's some devastating circumstances that you can't take it, that you want to but you can't. That might not be against you. But if you just say, oh, well, I really was just going over there to see how things are, and I really don't want that job, if you refuse that, you're probably that's going to be a mark against you. And so I would not do that. Don't interview for something unless you are willing to take that if it is offered to you. And then like I said, he was talking about things like that school might be all the way across town. Well, if they offer it to you, you're going to need to take it. And you can't come back and say, oh, well, I really don't want to drive all the way across town. You shouldn't have interviewed if you weren't willing to take it. So weigh out all of those things before you apply for positions. I think it's probably better for you to, to only apply to places that you really feel like you want to work. So anybody have any questions or anything that you want to share from that session last night? That was really a lesson in itself, and I think that the things that were shared were really good. Anybody have anything you want to share?
I'm glad you just said that about not going to the interview unless you're willing to take the position if they offer it to you. I don't know if we have a choice. I'm in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. I don't know if we have a choice in that matter. Okay. I think we're just in a pool, and whenever something comes up, they ask you beforehand, what level would you prefer? Mm-hmm. And then I guess whatever comes up, that's just what you get. I don't think you even have a preference of, going to a specific school and interviewing for that position. So I'm glad you said that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, think about that before.
And that might be something, you might have some kind of a conversation with somebody in your HR department for the district, just so you're really clear on how that works, because mm-hmm. you have a K-12 license. You're going to have a K-12 license to be an administrator. And, if you have always worked in elementary and that's what you prefer, you know, that's one thing, but you don't want to shut those doors on those other areas,
Right.
because all of these things that you've been learning about analyzing data and, you know, all these different artifacts that you've been working on, the school improvement plans and all of those different things, that's K-12. And, you know, it's the curriculum is going to be different at those different levels, but working with people and PLCs and all of those different kinds of things, it's sort of the same in K-12. And so I'd hate for you to shut the doors on that, but, you know, and then too, if you don't have a choice in that, then, you know, I guess in Winston-Salem, if you put your name in that pot, in that pool, then you're saying, I want an assistant principal position. I don't care where it is, you know. So, you know, you're kind of open to that. But, you know, that would be a good, you know, you could have a conversation with somebody in your HR department, just so you're really clear on that before it gets all the way down to going to an interview or something like that. And, you know, maybe maybe the interviews are done at the central office. Are there some interviews that take place?
I'm not sure. They haven't specified. They sent out the first, they call it an assessment, where they give us, they send it out to people who have applied for the position. They have a generic posting for anyone with administrative licensure to apply at certain points during the year, like February, June, and then November. And from that particular pool, they send to everyone who has applied a 10-question assessment, and they tell you that they'll get back to you within 3 to 4 weeks after grading it. And then that's when they start I think they call them the rounds of interviews. So I'm not really, I kind of know, but I don't know all the details.
Well, like I said, I think it would probably behoove you to really know those details, just so that you kind of know where you stand with all of that. The other thing is those 10 questions that they're giving you could have some of those landmine things in there. So they're doing some weeding out. So be careful with that and make sure that you're honest and that you know, address those with some concrete evidence of things that you have maybe learned and acquired during this program that you've been through. But I would say that having that little questionnaire thing that they send out to everybody before they start the rounds of interview, that's their tactic of weeding out some of, you know, so just be real careful with that, you know, and make sure that you're really prepared and you do a good job with that. You know, several weeks ago, I think it was the middle of November, maybe the 16th or something like that, we spent a little bit of time talking about 21st century leadership. We spent some time talking about that. And I thought we had a really great class. And I'm going to sort of go from that. I think that as a principal or as an assistant principal, as a teacher in a school, I think all of us in education have to be committed to being a 21st century teacher, leader, whatever your position is with education. I think that you have to be connected to the 21st century. And your readings for this week sort of fall right in line with that. You're talking about, in Glickman's book, you're talking about curriculum and action research. And in Hershey's book, you're talking about leading groups, leading PLCs or PLTs or whatever they're called in your school. So you can't be leading by, by some old methods. You've got to be out there, and what you're asking your teachers to do, you have to be doing. Sharing digital competencies. You are required to pass some digital competencies through the state, and so you should be using that as you work with teachers, as you conduct faculty meetings, any types of communications and so forth. You should be using that. But it's how you're going to implement those skills, and how do you know that you've done that correctly, and what will those students look like? What will those future ready students look like? And what do we want our students to know? So the chapter that you're supposed to read in Glickman on curriculum starts out with talking about, the curriculum is what we think students should be taught. And Sergio Vanini, I think it is, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, he said that it's not important to do things right unless you're doing the right things. I so love that quote, because, when you go to do some observations in some classrooms, and, I'll just use this for an example. If children are coloring, let's just say 6th graders are coloring pictures of turkeys because they've just read some novel or story about turkeys, had turkeys in it, and they're coloring these turkeys. What benefit is that to the students? Is that 21st century learning? Because those students, an 11-year-old knows how to color, so they're not learning how to color. And it might be fun, but if an activity like that that's just fun and doesn't really have a purpose, it's like not being the right thing. Okay, so you are supposed to do it. You've got to do things right, and you need to be doing the right things. So that is so important, and I just really believe that the teaching and learning in the classroom needs to have a purpose, and you need to make sure that you're following that purpose, so that you can stay on track with that. So there are a lot of things, a lot of discussion. The state mandates curriculum. The federal government, since No Child Left Behind, has been involved in mandating some curriculum. States that have high stake testing, sometimes testing drives what curriculum is going to be taught to the students. But also in the opening of that chapter, there's a lot said about teachers and about the creativity. Action research, and the second chapter that you have to read, is talks a lot about getting a group of teachers together and letting them work collaboratively to solve a problem. That's what an action research is to solve an issue. So, you have an issue, you get some data together, you analyze what's been going on, and then you brainstorm together and try to figure out, and you do some research and try to figure out what would be the best interventions to put in place for this and to help solve this problem. And then you do that, and you assess it and so forth. So there are some steps to that action research, but you're using teachers, and teachers really work hard, and they're committed, and they should be giving the empowerment to participate in some action research like that, and to be able to solve some issues themselves. So I think that you will actually find this reading pretty interesting. I don't know, think about what your position is on Common Core, on having a dictated curriculum. Does that take away the creativity, where really 21st century teaching and learning is about creativity? It's about communication and creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, and all of those things go into your 21st century teaching and learning. So kind of read through some of this, because it really touches on a lot of different avenues with that. And there's it talks about what should be the purpose of curriculum, and in a transmission position, it says that the function of education is to transmit facts, skills, and values to students. Well, that cannot be 21st century education if one person is just imparting that information to somebody else. That's kind of your old school, the teachers in the front of the classroom and teaching the class and telling the facts, and students, learn those facts and give it back on a test or whatever. And there's no real engagement from the students with that. And there is no, you don't see those 21st century skills being developed in that type of teaching in a classroom. So, as it goes on to talk about transaction, position, and transformation, you get into more of that creativity and student engagement and so forth, which, is definitely going to be in that 21st century learning. So having a future ready student is not going to happen by just chance. And in your resources for this week, in the class shell, there is a 21st century leadership resource where you have the little rainbow about the 21st century skills, and you can see, how those can be embedded into the curriculum and how that will be engaging for students. So pretty interesting reading. And your discussion boards, I love both of those. So choose one. Remember, you only have to do one. Choose one of those to do. But the reading for this week is pretty interesting, and will be some things that you have to take with you. So let me see if I can go back here and stop sharing my screen. Does anybody have anything you want to add to that? Also, in Hersey's book, leading groups at school, or like your PLCs or your PLTs, you did some research on that back in the APSL, the very first thing that you did, and trying to determine, who needs to be a member of my PLC. What is my problem? If I have a problem trying to raise test scores for EC students, I'm not going to ask the AIG teacher to be on my PLC, because she doesn't have any background of those students. And so you need, just like when you're your teacher in a classroom and you're going to do group work, you strategically determine who's going to be in those groups, because you know the students and you know what you're asking them to do, and everybody's going to have a job to do in that group. And group work is not just chaos time. It definitely has a function, and every person in the group should have a function to do. So you have to, in the classroom, you have to be very planned about how you want students to be engaged and how you want them to behave. And the same thing is going to be true, even more so, when you start working with those adults. When you start working with the adults in your school, you're going to have to be very clear and very specific about what your expectations are, because you're not going to get what you want unless you do that. And so that's very important. There is a section also in that curriculum that talks about diversity. So if in that transmission, when the teacher's standing in front of the room and imparting these facts and so forth, sometimes that teacher's perspective is given to students as if it is the only perspective. And that's not true. That we need to be a 21st century learner and a citizen, 21st century citizenship. Students have to be able to look at things from different perspectives and to be able to form their own perspective, to develop their own perspective. And so there's been a lot said through the years about, like, history books in the United States, and the perspective that the author has, is one way, and it's very biased, and doesn't pick up on some of, cultural diversities from around the world. And so I think that that's very important, that we need to share that, because we want our students to develop the skills to be able to collaborate, communicate, and work together with other people from all around the world. So other people in their town and other people from around the world. We want them to have those skills to be able to do that. That's what 21st century learning is all about. And 21st century learning is also not only learning about how to do that and so forth, but actually taking students beyond the walls of their classroom and engaging them with the world. And not that they're just going to help the rest of the world, but that they're going to be engaged with the rest of the world. And I know that we probably talked about those the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and those are just an excellent way. And if you've done very much reading about 21st century learning lately and so forth, I know that you've probably seen a lot of stuff about the UN Sustainable Goals. And there's a lot of ways that you can connect with those and branch out with whatever you're learning in the classroom, where students can be involved with some projects and so forth that will take their learning beyond the walls of that classroom. So you have to be thinking about that. And as the leader of the school, you want to be encouraging those adults to be those 21st century teachers and to move into that realm. So perspective taking is a big part of that as well. Okay, I've rattled and rattled. Does anybody have anything you want to share? All right, well, it was good to see you. Yes?
I have a question, Dr. Whitaker, but it could be like after everybody.
Okay.
It's a attached string question.
Okay.
And then also, one other question was, once we finish the program, how long will we have access to our shelves?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to find that out, though, and send you a message.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Thank you.
To the class shell and to your email, is that what you're asking?
Well, more so class shell and task string.
Oh, and task string. Okay. I don't know that for sure, but I will. I'll try to check on that tomorrow and send you all an answer to that. So just get to work on cleaning that last bit of stuff up. I will send you a link to join me at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening. If that doesn't work for you and you need me, just reach out to me and I will, try to help you get that stuff done. And I will try to stay right on top of checking your work as you get it in. I may be checking it in the evening and you might have submitted it in the morning, but if you don't have it by the next morning, you make sure you reach out to me and that I have that notification. All right. Well, I appreciate your time and I hope you have a great evening. If